Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore,
Here.
Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Kolar,
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd, here, Alderman Bosley,
Here.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Chairman Boyd.
Present.
5 present, you have quorum.
First board bill we will hear is Board Bill 185, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro.
So, Board Bill 185 puts a stop sign at the intersection of McCausland and Bancroft.
185.
Or 185, I'm sorry. I'm getting my cataracts taken out on the 30th. I am scheduled to go on the 30th, at least one eye at a time. And the neighbors wanted, I think some would argue I got too many stop signs. I'm sure Deanna would argue that, but the neighbors requested it, so I would ask that you pass this out.
Okay, let's go on to the question. Alderman Moore,
No question.
Alderman Kotor,
No questions.
Alderman Boyd,
No questions.
Alderman Bosley,
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro, I think we have a world's record.
We're working on it. I was just gonna do wanted to do a stop sign at every intersection.
I was wondering if you would consider that, you just get a whole thing out of the way, put a stop sign at every corner. in the
I'm
board.
thinking about it.
Okay, I understand motion on Board Bill 185.
I move that we adopt Board Bill 185 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Kotor,
Aye.
Alderman Boyd. I'm
Aye.
sorry, Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye. I was like, which one?
Alderman Bosley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
Thank you.
Board Bill 185 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Next board bill before us is Board Bill 203, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia.
You want me in there?
Would you please?
Yep. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill 203 is pretty cut and dry. It creates a micro-mobility fund for the money that's collected through the Streets Department from bike share and scooter companies. This way the money will not go into general revenue and will go towards what we originally talked about when we passed the bike share ordinance for infrastructure improvements, including signage and parking and other things for the bike share and scooters. I have Deanna Banker with Streets here, Liza Farr with Bi-State, the bike share working group, and then written testimony from one of the traffic engineers from CVB Transportation. Happy to take questions or have folks come up and testify.
Deanna, would you like to speak on the board bill?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Still giving my voice in this. Thank you, committee. So with the original intent of the board bill that was passed was that the monies that would come in would be available for constructing new bike lanes, maintaining and updating existing ones, signing, striping, and basic parking for any of those micro-mobilities. Micro-mobility is like new term that encompasses both bikes and scooters and anything futuristic that would fall in that category. So this fund is basically, I'll call it the legwork behind that creates that fund that allows those monies to come in so that we have access to it to do those things.
Okay, let's go around and ask questions. Alderman Moore.
How much money does this fund generate?
This year, I do my glasses. This year, we're at $41,958.34.
And will that be equally distributed?
They will go where the bike lanes are and where we can equally distribute it throughout the city where there's needs, yes.
Well, I can save you some money, you can take my bike lanes out.
I figured that's what you wanted.
Nobody rides a bicycle in the fort. You stole all the little green and yellow ones.
Bikes.
Yeah, they're all over the ward, they just lay down. The lights blinking, so You can save yourself some money by counting 27 wards and taking, we opt out of this project. Thank you.
Alderman Coulter.
No questions.
Alderman Boyd.
I guess my question, so the dollars that will come from this will go for, that's what I'm kind of
So-
off.
Sorry, we have existing about 100 miles of bike lanes throughout the city right now. That have been created over the last 5-6 years. And what we plan to do, there's some intersections where those bike facilities cross that needed some improvements. They need to be updated. There could be some new facilities added on to get from point A to point B, where it's just a short stretch between one bike route and another bike route that folks see that are highly traveled, and we could add a bike route in there. But that costs money, so we can use funds like this to create that. The little bike symbols that are all over those bike routes, those are actually really expensive to maintain because those are stencils, and the stencil's only good for so many every time you paint it. So if we want to keep those out there, and that's part of that maintenance of that route, these funds would help do that. And then we've got some of the locations that are where we have, I'll call it, especially in the summer months, the nice months, we have a lot of cycles and scooters that need to be parked so that it kind of brings order to the downtown area or Central West End area, that we can mark out a specific area and put in some bike racks so that folks know this is the location that I can park my scooter or my bike. Anybody, doesn't have to be a bike share, but this is where I can go park it and it's not leave it all over the sidewalk, so to say, so that sidewalks are free for pedestrians to walk.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No worries.
Alderman Bosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Is there a projected, I guess for the future, is there a projection of how much we'll be making, let's say in 5 years from now? Is there?
Is completely dependent on the amount of companies that are here in St. Louis. So, and it depends on how many units, whether it's a scooter or a bike or new type of mobility, that they have. So depending on how many units they have, it's $10 per unit per day. Is that right? I'll have to work that out. Is that right?
Is-
That's right. So that's
The
the
scooters are
amount.
$10 per day?
What is it?
It's
A year?
Per year.
$10 per scooter per year, that's right.
Missing some
So- I'm
thousands.
sorry. So I totally threw a blank there. So it comes to, so like 350 bikes or scooters would be $3,500 per year.
Okay.
So depending on how many they have out there, some of the scooter companies are running around 1,100. So you can do the math. So, we're running around 20,000 per company, around that price tag per year.
Yeah, I know
It's
we're
not a
putting new-
lot of money,
It's not.
but when we're talking about maintaining all these little additional programs, that's money that's not in my budget to handle right now.
It also provides matching funds for other opportunities.
Correct.
Okay, so it is matchable.
Yeah.
So just as a, well, of course it's a question, but I know it'd be improbable to think that you really realistically be able to use these funds, all across town, based on, I think things are pretty expensive, and that's really not a substantial amount of money. But do we have a focus area, seeing that it is, once again, not a lot of money, is there an area that you intend on focus on to make sure that there is, upgrades, or, to make sure that the scooters and the bikes have places for people to park them at?
Correct. I would plan to install those at, universally across the city. We definitely have locations, not as many call it out west. I think Pam probably doesn't see a whole lot of the scooters out in her ward, because it's harder to get into where, into into that Forest Park area, the central corridor. But, and like in your ward, I would definitely see there's a high usage in your ward of scooters and bikes, that I would see it universally distributed in that area. Honestly, up in all the wards, they have, we've identified what are bike corrals that were done with our previous Bike St. Louis job. So those can all be updated and maintained, because I think the one actually in your ward has been hit, and we had to remove part of it.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it
we
could
took
be,
it
it could
out.
fund things like that.
Okay.
And when we have Liza Farr come up, she'll be able to speak to the equity piece and sort of how the bike share working group has been working alongside the city to make sure that we are addressing the needs of all neighborhoods.
Understood, and that's my concern, just someone to make sure, and I know it's not once again, a large pot of money, but I always think about, years from now, hopefully we'll have a lot more companies and a lot more, units within the city, and hopefully, some different forms of transportation. We got hoverboards now, you have no clue what's coming in the future for us, so, we're kind of at that ground level where we're making the decisions to make sure things are equitable, so I want to make sure that at least people have a chance to go back and look at what is equitability, what this look like, what it looks like, and what we all intend on doing to make sure that things are split apart equally with this fund before it starts to generate, a more substantial amount of money.
And the alderman kind of hit it on. We do have a bike share working group that is composed of residents, business owners, universities. It's got aldermen on it. It has a wide range of people from all over the biking community and in the different areas within the city and even the county, because we want to make sure that as we look things, we're not drawing that line in the sand. And the way the permit itself is written, it was written so that we made sure that it's equitable throughout the region, and that we're looking at our target inclusion neighborhoods that we have in the city, and ensuring that these bike companies install percentages of their fleet that's on the road that day within those areas to ensure that equity is being reached.
So, one last question,
Sure.
who is the, and I guess after reading through it, I wasn't really clear, who is the sole decider in how these funds are released? Is it you and the bike working group collectively together making those decisions, or who makes that final decision, or has
I believe it says BPS,
the
right?
authority?
Yeah, I think it's going through the Board of Public Service, would be the ultimate body that would approve those, knowing that the bike share working group is going to have a say in that, and what needs to be done is, we've been looking and talking a lot about different projects that we want to kick off, and this could be great match money for those type of features. We've talked about parking areas throughout the city, and this would also, this falls right in there. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
very much. I don't have any more questions. Mr. Chairman.
Deanna, when the street department paves a street and they pave over the lanes, so this fund would pay for that, or would that come out of the capital that paid for the paving of the street?
When the street department paves the street, then my crews come in behind it and stripe it. So this would be extra on top, because the paving happens like once every 15 years, and striping happens about 3 times a year.
Okay.
So it's, striping happens much more frequently than the road actually gets paved.
Okay, I had a curious question when the scooters came about,
Yes, sir.
because when I was looking at the ordinance,
No.
a bicycle is a self-propelled vehicle, basically.
Not through the very first version, we allowed for e-bikes as well, which are those are electric, which were, I call it electric assist
Okay.
vehicles.
Okay. I thought I had read through the 70710 and looked at the language, but that's okay. I was just kind of curious about that. We have some people that want to speak, is that right?
Yeah.
We didn't get the sign-in sheet out, so can we?
I think it's just one person.
Okay. We'll just get them to sign in and then let them speak. And this is the individual that's gonna talk about the equity you mentioned.
Mhm, This is Liza Farr. She works with By State and is the lead on the bike share working group.
Good morning, committee.
morning.
Thank you for having me. Liza Farr, by State Development, and I lead the bike share working group, and formed that group 2 years ago, I guess it is now. So we are an advisory group to bike share efforts, and we sort of planned the system and transitioned that to the dockless bike share permit that we now have in place today. That is now a dockless bike and e-scooter permit as well. So as others have mentioned, we are particularly focused on the equity component and continue to advise on that, both to Deanna and the Streets Department as well as to the companies themselves. We did push for that requirement that 20% of vehicles are in our sort of target social equity and inclusion neighborhoods, which includes 8 different areas between Del Mar and Natural Bridge on the north side, and then down in the Gravois Park, Dutchtown area on the south side. So that's a little bit of background on the bike share group. Most of what is relevant to this bill has been said by Deanna, but I did want to provide a little bit of background also in my work with the National Association of City Transportation Officials, which has produced a lot of guidance on various transportation topics, but the most recent of which was a guidance for what they call shared active mobility, which is, again, bikes and e-scooters, lots of terminology that's being made up currently. I helped write that guidance manual along with cities across the country, and they also put in their guidance several points about spending fees on things like purchasing and installing physical infrastructure related to the bike and scooter system. So that can include the sort of lanes, bike lanes, and facilities that help make it safe for users to use the vehicles, as well as parking areas so that they can maintain order within the city. So I'm happy to answer any more questions about that, but didn't want to take up too much more time.
Sure. Thank you. Alderman Moore.
No.
Alderman Coler.
No question.
Alderman-
Love the scooter and the bikes.
Alderman Boyd.
The question that I have is back to Alderman Bosley, to kind of piggyback. Okay, tell me the areas you said that you all were focusing on.
Sure. So there's 8 different sort of individual neighborhoods, and I'll just say 20% of vehicles have to be in those areas in total, with 1.5% of vehicles in each of those 8 areas to ensure they are spread throughout them. So they include, I mean, it's really a strip like between Del Mar and Natural Bridge, and including Hyde Park as well. So that covers, you know, many different neighborhoods spreading from the West End, Hamilton Heights, all the way over to Old North. And then the other last one is essentially the footprint of the Dutchtown South Community Development Corporation, which is Gravois Park, Marine Villa, Mount Pleasant, and Dutchtown down on the south side.
And I guess the reason why I'm asking is because Deanna, like she had said earlier, we had bike racks and stuff we had to take out. But our area, I'm looking 10 to 15 years from now, that people will use more bikes, and different types and class of people will be moving in our communities. And so how are you all projecting to prepare for that time to get us in place for that? Because now, I'm kind of like Sam Moore, I don't want the scooters in my area. I have enough problems with the line bikes. And so we're constantly getting those off the street that have been destroyed. But again, 15 to 20 years from now, the way the transportation is going, it'll probably be less people using cars and more people using that kind of transportation. So how are you all looking to that to accommodate our communities, to get us prepared for that? I don't want us to be on the back end. I want us to be in the front end to be ready for that.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think our main role within the bike share working group is sort of pushing for equitable policies and programming. So in terms of this bill especially, we would be pushing for a lot of this money to be spent in the target neighborhoods, and in making it safe for people that are using scooters, sure, but also using their own personal bikes, walking, crossing the streets. All of that can get helped by those additional bike facilities and lanes that make it a little bit less car focused and sort of slow vehicles down a little bit more. So I think over the years that would be my main answer to that point. In terms of how to prepare in a more economic sense, that's policies that are sort of beyond this realm, but in the terms of housing and economic development policies that ensure existing communities get to benefit from these types of things instead of getting pushed out.
So are you all gonna have like listening sessions or meetings with communities that aren't impacted as the Central West End and the West Quarter and downtown? Are you gonna meet with people to kind of start educating them to get them involved in that process?
Actually, so I think in terms of spending this money, that's the Streets Department and Board of Public Services sort of purview to do what they will with that money. We will advise. But we did, by state, received a grant from the Missouri Foundation for Health to do kind of exactly what you're talking about, engagement activities in the target neighborhoods that I talked about. So we are partnering with target neighborhood organizations that we've designated in each of those areas, and we're sort of giving them funding. It's not a ton, it's $2,500 per neighborhood, and helping them by providing materials and guidance to put on, safety classes, how to ride a bike safely in the city. Maybe it is just a group ride to teach people how to ride and help them feel more comfortable. And through all of those, there will be surveys handed out that sort of ask, what can we do to make this work better for you, essentially.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Bosley.
I'll try to make this
God
pretty quick.
bless you.
Bless you.
So
He's gonna be really good. Yeah.
the first question, it would be more so just for the record. Why is it that we had to ask the companies that we currently are in agreement with to have 20% of their vehicles put within those 8 neighborhoods or underserved areas?
I mean, I can't speak for certain that they would not have done that otherwise, but we felt that it was our responsibility in the public sector to protect the goals that we'd set out for bike share, which included 2 specific goals about equity and about access. So we followed through on that by embedding it within this requirement. And that way we could be certain it was going to happen and there would be vehicles spread. And they ended up spreading much further than just those neighborhoods because they were pushed further to the north and south by that.
And it's written in the policy that's adopted by the Board of Public Service as well, and part of the contract that the scooter and bike share companies sign.
So it'd be safe to say that St. Louis hasn't always been so equitable, right? So in light of that, as a question, and I guess as a scenario, right? Or less of that, how would this look, seeing as we can't always measure the intent of companies and their, how would I say, we can regulate how they do business only to an extent. We never want to run people away, right? But we also want to make sure that as a city, we're getting the best that we can get for every resident, who lives in the city. How would this ordinance look, reflecting that 20% that we are asking for in equitability as far as having these units spread out in a way to where there is, there is service in, once again, those underserved areas. Because I can kind of see, even with BPS, we all kind of know the city and how things always and have been run. We all are changing, making changes, and doing the best that we can in the positions that we have, and everybody has a different role to play. But some of us won't be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We all have amazing things that we all intend to do in life, who knows, right? But these are the rules that we are laying down in which we'll be playing. you know, which we'll be utilizing, you know, in the next 5 or 10 years. So, would you say that that this would, in any way, I guess, hurt that other 80% by making sure that we have 20% of that fund and ensuring it going to those 8 neighborhoods where we already have an idea of these companies may or may not have made sure that there is, you know, they're adequately served?
Sure.
Okay, let me, before you answer
go
that, is there a question about how the funds will be?
Not at all. It's a question to them on what does it look like, or how what does it look like, you know, with this fund, as far as it being, what does this fund look like with 20% of it going to those 8 neighborhoods?
Okay, the reason I asked that is because the administrator was more of a Deanna question than for Metro.
Well, can I-
So,
Okay,
let me
yeah,
let
I'm with everybody.
Deanna answer that.
Sure, go ahead.
You're fine.
Oh, so, yeah, I think the funds that we would have within this pot should also be equitably distributed within the area, and not just the areas that are spelled out within the actual bike share working group and that permit itself, because it hits that, I'll call it those target inclusion areas, but throughout the city as well. Because I think there are locations that I would love to get your bike corral fixed, but it's not in that target inclusion neighborhood. So there's issues like that throughout the city that would need some usage of these types of funds for bikes and pedestrians within that scooter share. So do I see it being spent equitably? Yes, because that's the intent of the bike share working group and of in its entirety throughout the policy.
Right. But, you know, in the event that we're not here to oversee that, right, we're kind of just in the same situation that we are with other pots of money before they grow. And when they get to a massive amount, we all are sitting at the table fighting over it.
Sure. If we're welcome to come back, and if you want to look at what we spent in a year and see where the money goes, we're happy to come back and report out on that for you, so you can see where those monies have been spent and who was behind those policies and why.
Okay. And my intent wasn't to
We'd
make
be more
the
than happy
change.
to do that.
Understood.
Absolutely.
The intent is to state the obvious and just make sure we're having that conversation.
Absolutely.
So-
I fully intend, it's a very transparent process in my world, and we intend to be accountable for all of those uses.
Certainly appreciate it.
Alderman Middlebrook, you kind of came in the middle, but how about to move back around? Okay. I'm not sure if this is Lisa, a question for Lisa or you, Deanna.
Sure.
So who's monitoring the equity indicators on whether or not you have that 20% in certain neighborhoods, whatever that matrix is?
Well, I will probably say both of us. As many eyes as we have on it, I think Liza's got to, you yourself, you have access, I have access. Our bike pedestrian, our police streets manager had access before he left and resigned. I believe TrailNet also has access. So we have several individuals that have eyes on this. We have it's a web app that spells out basically geocoded that area, and then has the line and the bird units, all their GPS units located on that map, so you can see who's in what area, and it spits out a report kind of thing on the screen of how many percentage or how many units are within each of those areas
Okay.
a day, and starting in the morning, because you can really only visualize what happens in the morning, because after 6 o'clock in the morning, somebody takes that scooter and off it goes.
Okay, if I remember correctly, when we first passed this, when Alderman Ogilvy introduced it, the permit fees were going to pay for a staff person.
There are 2 different fees. There's a permit fee that
Correct.
they pay per year, and then there's a $10 per year per unit fee.
Correct.
So the permit goes to administer the program. Mhm.
The application fee, that $500 application fee is basically pays for my staff to go through, review it, have the meeting with the bike share working group, bring in the new company so we can have a conversation with them, hear from them, ask them questions, and then go back and administer and go back and forth until that permit has been fully issued. So that's, those are those funds, or
And-
dollars.
So when one of the dockless stations get damaged, is there a turnaround time on repair, or you just remove it? How do you handle that?
There are no stations. So with this, there are no stations. So are you talking about the individual units? So-
Well, I thought there was a place to put the bikes, but I don't know.
No, these are called stationless. There are no stations
Okay,
for this.
station, okay.
So this is, the part of this program is where people can park their bikes wherever is a legal parking space. They have to leave the sidewalk clear, and keep a 4-foot walking path open. But otherwise, they can park it in any bike rack, in between, on the sidewalk up against, close to a building, as long as the sidewalk remains clear and free. If we have parking spaces allocated within the street, they could park there.
Okay, the other question was, just went out my head.
55.
That's what I was gonna say, Sam.
2 days later. Oh, well.
When's that party?
Oh, bye.
We can't even come back.
He need the round two.
Okay, okay, so I do want to reflect for the record that, I probably messed this name up, so I'm gonna spell it. So we have an email from JACQUE.
Oh, Jackie Lumpson.
Lumpson, okay.
This is
In
Jackie.
support of 14th Ward resident, in support of this board bill. Okay. There no more- Any more presenters? Alderman Moore.
Yeah, you said that the $500 fee that they pay, your staff use that, and your staff being paid by the city? How are they receiving the $500 fee as well?
We do not. That's part of this. So currently, that $500 fee goes into general revenue, and we do not receive it.
Okay, but you made the statement that your staff use that to,
We would. That was the intent of what we would use that $500 fee for. That's how it was set up.
all right, I want to make sure you're not double dipping.
I'll see you now. Okay, I found my question.
Oh,
So, you heard earlier, there's some bikes or scooters that lay for days in the neighborhood.
Sure.
Who's tracking that? Why is that happening?
so if it's laying and it's broken, that would be something that if anybody finds one, certainly let us know. You can send it in through CSB, or any of the users on the street, they can always turn it in via the app for that unit, and turn it in as a damaged app, or a damaged bike, a unit, or a scooter, and then the scooter companies are responsible for coming to pick that up.
Okay, so.
They have to know about it.
They do a CSB request or something, say
Sure.
there's a bike at a certain.
Or they can call the company directly,
yeah.
which I can give you guys that number.
Okay.
if
It's
you're
on, it's
especially
located on every
More or interested.
bike
I
or
can give you the
scooter.
number.
It's
And I guess
ridiculous.
after a week, they have no
Okay.
clue where this bike is, right? Because by then
The GPS on it should ping, and they should know about it. If it hasn't moved within, I think it's 7 days, they're required to go out and relocate it, because obviously it's not getting ridden for.
So let's say
that
one
area.
is mangled.
Sure.
We have a lot of people in my neighborhood that like to sell scrap materials.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a do not accept this with the scrap yards in case somebody wants to take a lime bike or a yellow bike or whatever?
I wish that was a general thing across the board with scrap yards, because they take my signs and my traffic signals and everything else, so.
Oh, well, we should do something about that. That should be a don't do that. We got better at the copper and requiring identification and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another conversation
Yeah.
we have at a later time. But anyway, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 203.
I move that we adopt Board Bill 203 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Then moving to second. Any objection to throw? That's,
Can't be sued, right? Look at 55.
Alderman Moore.
President.
I'm sorry.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderman Kotar.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd.
aye. Okay, board bill. Go ahead.
5 aye votes and 1 present.
203 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Next board bill is
Mr.
board
Chairman.
bill. Yes.
I want to make one comment before we go any further.
Okay.
And on the corner of Vanderbilt and Garfield, there's a stack of line bikes that are so high, they're over 20 feet tall, in the junkyard. Line bikes
Really?
stacked high as you can get them, and they sell them all day on Garfield and Vanderbilt. So if you're looking for your line bike, you can find them.
They sell them?
They take them and scrap them. They
Oh,
sell them to the
sell 'em to
scrap yard.
Okay.
So
Well,
who would like to
Scrap yard,
move
stack
that
them all
issue?
up and crush them.
I think we can talk with Lime. Lime might have given them over because they do, if they are damaged beyond
Okay.
repair, they do scrap them.
Okay. Would you
So-
find out for sure if that?
I'll let them know.
Okay, thank you. I'd be curious, could you send me a quick email? If they can email you a response and then you just forward it to me?
Where this was at Vandeventer and Garfield, you said, Alderman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Simmons Junkyard.
Okay. Is that it, Alderman Moore?
That's it.
Okay, next board bill before us is Board Bill 213, sponsored by Alderwoman
Thank you.
Vaccaro.
I'll get that number. Alderman Newstead.
Yeah, don't move.
This is, yeah.
You might as well stay
I
where
don't
you
know if
at.
there's gonna be any questions,
No,
but.
I'll just sit here until you,
Okay,
how's that?
because I do have folks from,
That's
Mr.
fine.
Museum here. Okay. Good morning, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm feeling very short.
You
but
wanna pull
that's
it up
all right.
some more?
That's okay, no, that's all right. All right, so I have, for everyone, let me share, I'm gonna take one of these, I'm passing around a map. This is regarding a parking permit zone. Thank you. Notes here. And you'll see this is on Skinker and Fauquier, which is just west of Forest Park. And I'm just lost on my notes. All right. So what you're looking at here, you'll see, so on this map, Skinker Boulevard, so that's Forest Park, just to the, well, below, but it's just to the east of Skinker. And then you'll see Fauquier Drive, which is over on the left-hand side of your page there, to the left of that parking lot. And so this is a parking permit zone that would primarily serve the Library and Research Center of the Missouri History Museum, as well as some of the residents right there. So what I want to first describe is just the situation that we're dealing with at this particular spot, and then I can talk a little bit more about what this zone looks like. So just to the north of what you're looking at is Washington University's Hilltop campus. And they have been undergoing quite a bit of construction recently. That is a temporary situation, but they are going to be erecting about 4 new buildings there. It's going to result, they're putting in underground parking, but it's going to result in less parking than what has been available. So we know going into the future that there are high parking demands in this entire area. And I've been working with streets and with the various neighborhoods. We've put up signage in different places in order to increase visibility and to prohibit rush hour parking so that people entering and exiting various side streets can get out. In this particular area, we have an opportunity to create a parking zone. And the reason why we can do this is it's about 25 spots. And we have the Missouri History Museum as our partner here. And what they have about 45 employees in this building. So this is a separate building. There's a History Museum in the park over on Lindell, but this is a Library and Research Center, and it houses many of their collections. And it's also open as a public library. So they have
visitors regularly coming in there. They have volunteers, in addition to the 45 employees. And they have 26 spots right there in that lot that you can see right there, but that clearly doesn't serve everybody who's coming. And so their employees, visitors, volunteers are also parking along Skinker, and then also on that little side street as well. And it's become pretty dangerous for anybody parking on the opposite side of Skinker from the Library and Research Center. It's a 4-lane road, it's very busy. There's not a crosswalk in the vicinity. There used to be a light and a crosswalk there when that building was a synagogue, but that has since been removed. So what we would like to do is create a safe place for, thank you, for their employees, visitors, and residents to be able to park. So this parking zone would be just on the west side of Skinker, where you can see in red A, B, and C, and then this little stretch of Fauquier Drive on both the north and south sides of the street. And that's going to add approximately 25 spaces. And what this bill does is authorizes the streets department to erect signs that say permit parking only. However, it also authorizes them to then enter into an agreement with a nonprofit, which in this case would be the Missouri History Museum. So it would be their employees who would be administering parking tags, keeping track of license plate numbers. We don't expect the traffic commissioner to be managing this parking zone by any means. It's very limited to the people who are coming in and using that building. I do have staff, including the director of the History Museum here, who can answer any questions. I also have a letter from the residents right around there, the Ellenwood subdivision, which is actually a combination of Clayton residents and city residents. I have a letter from their trustees saying that they are in favor of this. There's actually, right where the parking ends there in Fauquier, there's a gate. And so the residents really only park on the other side of the gate. They don't use this street, but they will be working with the History Museum to make sure that residents can still access that stretch of the street should they need it. There are no meters here, so we're not, there's no revenue that's coming in that we're going to be losing. I've also spoken with the Vandanta Society, which is the neighbor immediately to the north, and they are also in favor. They have their own parking on site, and they would only be using the street parking on the weekends, whereas the History Museum would be permitting parking just Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So otherwise, on the weekends, anybody going to Forest Park, all of this would be open on the weekends. Let me read, I'll pass out this letter too that I've got from the Ellendale trustees. Here you go. So this is from Rich Lentz, who's a trustee of the Ellenwood subdivision. Dear Alderman Navarro, as trustee of the Ellenwood subdivision, I want to express my support for the proposed parking district. The History Museum is part of our subdivision and has been a terrific neighbor, not to mention an important cultural institution for the entire region. Ellenwood is pleased to include the Skinker end of Fauquier Drive outside of the existing gate as part of the district and subject to permit restrictions. As a significant part of our subdivision, the History Museum should have access to the street just as other institutions, such as Memorial Presbyterian Church, have access to Alexander Drive for their members and visitors. The entire Fauquier Drive, however, will remain a private street with access ultimately at the discretion of the subdivision. Thank you for all of your work and service. And again, this is an interesting little side street that's right on the border of city, county, which is why Ellenwood subdivision it's not a city neighborhood. But that is what we're looking at. And again, I do have, we have Deanna here. I've been working with her on this, as well as representatives from the History Museum to answer any questions.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and hear from, again, anyone signing up for it? If someone's gonna speak, you know, on the sign.
I know, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I know. The only thing is I'm concerned about is if something comes up.
The private street, it's a private street.
Fantastic.
So you don't.
I don't mind.
Okay. You feel okay? You feel okay?
So she catch something that don't have an ash associated with it. How old is she? 15. She will be this month. She almost out there.
I mean, curable, of course.
Right, but she's almost out there. Yeah. Her skin is real sensitive.
Do you want to take my spot? Or do you want to? You want to scoot? I don't know.
Oh,
Wherever- I know you don't want to be up there, so.
Don't run, Dan, don't run.
I got another meeting.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Well, we could see if, do you, should I just let them, Chairman,
Terry.
Deanna's gonna have to, she's got another meeting to go to, so I don't know if we want to see if there are first questions for her.
Okay.
Sorry. I should've-
By a show
or-
of hand on the committee, anyone have a question for Deanna?
I do actually,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I'll be quick. And then maybe this is for the treasurer's office, but have you had any discussions with them? So here we are creating a permit parking zone that's gonna have to be administered by a nonprofit, not a city agency. And I'm appreciative that the Historical Society is willing to do this. But in most neighborhoods where you have parking issues, I mean, it's not necessarily possible. There's not a big institution with staff like the History Museum to help with these things. Has there been any progress made in coming up with a way for the city, like every other city in America, to actually administer permit parking zones?
Not that I'm aware of at this time.
Okay.
I
And I'm asking you because you're here and we're on the subject.
Sure.
I get that there's other parties involved in those discussions, but it's frustrating to me to see that we can't as a city figure out how to do something as simple as administering permit parking.
Understood. I will say, in my brief stint here at the city, I've tried to investigate the history of it, and there is no overarching policy behind it. All I've been able to find is individual ordinances that have each been developed in their own way
Right.
with their own administrator. So it's been interesting in trying to figure out how this moves forward, knowing that it says that the traffic and transportation administrator is responsible for, but yet I have zero staff and zero programs and zero ability to manage that. I am relying solely on the 501
The
nonprofits
nonprofit.
to manage it. Now,
Yeah.
now we have been lucky enough to have a few of those out there to manage those, but there are several ordinances that have, I'm not sure who's managing them.
Right. And how about enforcement? I mean, is there any actual enforcement done?
The treasurer's office does enforce it,
They do.
yeah.
What's a ticket for parking in a, do we know what the ticket
No
amount
idea.
is?
I don't know if Cindy received one.
Okay.
I don't know.
The police can enforce it as well.
Yes, police can enforce it as well. I will say that. Yes,
Great, thank you.
no worries. I would love to see it.
All right, we'll talk more about
Maybe
that.
we'll have you back again.
Yeah.
Maybe. That sounds like a good another topic. How's
Thank
that?
you, Deanna.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Good morning.
good morning.
Yeah, so this is a safety issue for us. I'm sorry, should I?
Tell us who you are.
Okay, sorry. Christopher Gordon, Missouri Historical Society. I'm the Director of Library and Collections at this facility at 225 South Skinker. It's our library and research center, so that's the facility that's open to the public for researchers to come in, do genealogy, do historical research, what have you. Plus, we have all our collections there, so we do have people coming in to see our objects collections as well. Visitors coming in and out, patrons, members, staff, obviously, members of the neighborhood are always coming by. So it's a busy facility. In terms of this, it's really a safety issue for us. Skinker is a very busy street. Traffic moves very fast. Unfortunately, a number of years ago, we actually had a patron that was killed on Skinker, attempting to cross the street. We also had a volunteer that was hit by a car. So we're very mindful of this situation, and as it was said, our parking lot has like 26 spots, but on average, we have up to 60 cars a day that we need for parking. So having everyone on our side of the street is very important to us, and again, for safety and ease and so forth.
Okay. By a show of hands, anyone have a question for Christopher? Okay. I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 213.
I move that we adopt Board Bill 213, the do pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any objection to previous roll?
Sam's present on previous roll.
Okay, Sam.
Objection.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Kotar,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Aye. So Board Bill 213 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. The Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee is going to take a recess. We will be reconvening in about 5 to 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman.
We can get some class.
Professor, can you get that door for me?
Yeah, I'm gonna go sit in one of his classes.
Okay, the Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee is now reconvening. What we now have before us is Board Bill 204, sponsored by Alderman Tom Oldenburg from the 16th.
Very good. Good morning, thanks everybody. Board Bill 204 is an amendment to an existing ordinance, Ordinance 70892, which was formerly Board Bill 173 committee substitute that was introduced of the small cell wireless facilities. If you recall, we had to pass bills before the end of December, so around our small cell wireless permitting process. And we had to do that in time to make sure that we comported with state law, House Bill 1991. Just about a week or two before the end of the year, we realized that there probably should be this added change, which really just preserves the city's ability to regulate historic districts and make the appropriate aesthetic regulations in the future all allowed by state law. It also maintains alignment with the zoning changes that are coming around the small cell facilities. So from a high level, this is a cleanup, but it is in fact an added section L to the existing ordinance or the existing board bill. And I don't know if you have the full board bill in front of you with the change, or do you just have the amendment? Okay. So effectively, we are just adding section L to this by way of a cleanup that makes sure that we can regulate and require certain reasonable, technical, feasible, non-discriminatory, and technologically neutral design or concealment measures whereby these things might be in historic districts. Again, all that has to be allowed by state law. So section L is added, or sorry, paragraph L is added in section 3 of the ordinance. I think it's about 8 or 9 lines.
Okay. So, seems shouldn't be too controversial.
Wouldn't think so.
But do we have any speakers or any other speakers? I know Rob will be there for technical, but Leroy, any testimony? Okay. Okay, so let's go around. Alderman Coulter, questions?
Just real quick, I see we've got Leroy's here for AT&T, and I guess Dave's here for Verizon. Does anyone, did telecoms have any objections to this? No? Okay.
Thank you.
No. Tom, thanks for doing this. I represent some historic districts who I know have griped about some of these things in the past, not small cell, but other, telecom applications. So this could be good. Thank you.
Agree, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Boyd,
No question.
Alderman Bosley.
I do have one. This is pretty cut and dry. As far as who would have accessibility between, I guess, us and the people who be regulating this to say whether or not something is impeding one of these wireless facilities from operating correctly?
Is operating correctly?
No, I'm saying, so it says here that, give me 1 second, that any design or concealment measures shall not have the effect of prohibiting any provider's technology, nor shall such measures be considered a part of the small wireless facility. So just as far as prohibiting providers' technology, hypothetically speaking, if, you know, like in a historic district, you had a homeowner who looked outside and it was right out front, and they said, you know, I want you to do something else with this, right?
Right.
And the thing that was chosen to be done with it to conceal it was something that the provider said it is prohibiting their technology from operating correctly, right?
Correct.
Who would measure that? Who would be able to go out and see that from our perspective or from our side to say that, you know, what they're saying is true? How do we measure that?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, and I'll take a guess at this, my guess is to play that out. They would have to show a hardship that their technology can't be used as a result of the concealment aesthetics that we put on the wireless cell. Does that sound right?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Dr. Robert Gaskell-Clemens, Chief Technology Officer. We know what kind of materials interfere with the RF signals that these small wireless facilities emit and need to be able to receive. So for instance, we know we wouldn't be able to get away with aesthetic requirements where they have to shroud them using metal or concrete. You know, there are industry standard materials that can be used to conceal these types of devices without interfering with their intended purpose. So there's that check and balance. And then in addition to that, we would be publishing ahead of time, to the best extent that we can, what those concealment requirements are. And then if, based on the specific nature of a particular small wireless facility, carriers would need to come to us and explain to the Board of Public Services satisfaction why that particular concealment requirement will not work in a specific area. Because there could be other things that could mess up that deployment. Like for instance, it's, you know, in an area where there is a lot of brick and concrete or something like that. But hopefully the carriers would take that into account in selecting where they want to deploy these things.
Understood. Hey, it makes sense. I'm just for one thing, it's always about the future.
Mhm.
You know, we are pretty undeveloped as a city when it comes down to technology. So as time goes on, especially as we have an influx of people moving in, there'll be more money floating around.
Mhm.
And the more money you got, the more you try to save. So,
Yeah.
you know, hypothetically speaking, if we have, let's say a wireless company that has not been here that wants to move in and do business because of, we have a booming technological sector, right? They come in, they get to building all these new wireless facilities, and we're saying, all right, you want to build your new tech, it's going to cost you $2 or $3 per unit that you're putting in to install concealment measures. So whatever it is, whatever materials we use, let's, you know, just as a base, something that isn't cost effective, something that's very cost effective, let's say $3, right? If you know, it costs you an extra $30,000 or $40,000 to install something and you don't want to pay that, right? On paper, you know, from what it looks like here, they just get to say that this is you know, stopping me from, you know, stopping my technology from working. And if I hear what you're saying, but from what this says, it looks like they have all the wherewithal to say that, you know, it's not.
Well, yes and no. I mean, first, they would need to present a technical argument as to how the concealment requirements that we'll be publishing up front, so everybody will know what they are. They would have to present a technical argument stating in technical terms how those concealment requirements are interfering with their equipment. So there's, what interferes with equipment is a known entity. It's certain building materials, it's certain locations, things like that. It's interference from other things that are in the area. So it's, that into itself limits somebody's ability to come in and say, hey, this interferes with my equipment, just because they don't like it.
And so I'm 100%,
Yeah.
you know,
And
going to
the other
trust
thing,
the
other thing I'd like to stress is that the purpose of the concealment requirements are not to deter deployments. The purpose of concealment requirements are to maintain the character of the area in which these are being deployed. So the concealment requirements that we would be contemplating through the Board of Public Service are not to deter the deployment of small wireless facilities or try and steer them in a certain direction because we're making it too difficult for carriers to be able to deploy them. We want the technology, but we also need to make sure it's deployed in a way that's respectful. We know what kinds of things would materially interfere with the function of that small wireless facility, and any exceptions to the concealment requirements would need to be based on a technical argument that survives scrutiny from the Board of Public Service and those who manage our historical sites.
So I think, Alderman, to answer your question, sort of who is the final arbiter of this, if a carrier says this interferes with our technology, this concealment regulation you're putting on this certain facility, the Board of Public Service, probably in consultation with Robert, and others will say, no, here are kind of the known standards, we don't think it does. Sorry. But again, this is still America, so I assume they could pursue legal options to the extent, and then there would have to, sort of be a fact-setting session to decide what happens next. But yeah, I think effectively the Board of Public Service would be kind of the final decision maker.
So, not to say anything bad about BPS or the people who work there, I don't know every single position that exists there, nor do I know every person that works in these positions or the knowledge that they have. But I do know we have a chief technology officer, and we haven't had one of those before. So that means that somewhere, someplace, we don't have what we need in tech, to ensure that the right mind is pushing the city towards the right direction for us to be a part of this technological wave that's happening throughout the country, right? So I said it before, and you might not want the authority, but I like us to always maintain some sort of a voice. And seeing as you are the chief technological officer, I once again said it before on other things just going back to BPS and individuals who don't really have the knowledge, right? Doesn't always, I think, put us in a position, and I'm voting on this. I just want you to know that. I just want to put on record, once again, that I really feel like there should be a little bit more involvement coming back to our chief technological officer when we're dealing with tech in general, when it comes down to finalizing decisions, because BPS ain't always, I've talked to a lot of people, and I'm sure everybody else has too. We don't have, we don't have people running around with all the technological knowledge in BPS, right? They have a lot of extensive knowledge in other things, and not to say that they're not knowledgeable in what we're talking about, but once again, seeing as you are the chief.
To address that, I have been intimately involved in the assessments of HB 1991, in the assessments of the FCC regulations, in crafting these ordinances. I'm also heavily involved in the development of new pole specifications that can support small wireless facilities, the creation of an online permitting system, getting that tested through the internet. So I am intimately involved in getting all the pieces and parts in place for us to have a comprehensive approach, both in the right-of-way and on private property, towards how these small wireless facilities are deployed. That process and everything that goes into that, I would imagine will handle 90-95% of small wireless facility deployments. I will remain involved in the assessments and analysis of the outliers and the exceptions. So if an issue were to come up with concealment requirements in a specific area, I will remain involved. What I won't be doing is managing on behalf of the Board of Public Service or Streets Department or whoever the day-to-day deployment of small wireless facilities. I'll remain involved in policy, I'll remain involved as issues come up, and I'll remain involved handling exceptions.
That's great. All right, I have no more questions. Thank you.
Alderman Middlebrook.
I have no questions.
Alderman Moore.
On the procedure and requirements of the facilities that already exist, are they grandfathered in, or will we be?
This only applies to small wireless facilities, which those are not already deployed throughout the city. This does not apply to macro sites, which are the towers and the antennas that you see on the sides of buildings right now. That does not apply to those do not apply. This ordinance does not apply to those.
None of these exist in the city
Yeah.
today, so for
Small
once,
wireless
we're ahead of the
facilities are
curve.
brand new, and have not been deployed in the city thus far.
Okay, old got me. That's all I have.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 204.
I move that we got Board Bill 204 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous roll.
Been moved and second, any objection to previous roll? Hearing none, Board Bill 204 comes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Next Board Bill before us, Board Bill 214.
Thank you all. Enjoy your day.
You're welcome. Sponsored by Alderman Samuel Moore. Jr. What's that? Von Moore? Alderman Von Moore, Board Bill 214, sir.
Where'd that come from?
Denise brought it.
Remember,
No, the
we're
Von
doing the
Moore.
street, we're doing the street, honorary street naming, it's a German term, it's kind of a German search term, I think. He
Okay.
wanted to be known as
And I'm
Von.
German.
You German? I heard that, baby. You probably are. You got a tab in there.
Okay, Alderman Moore.
This is a three-way stop sign in an area where Farragut School is, and the kids are getting off the bus, and there's no stop sign or anything there. It's a two-way stop right now, and I just need to add another stop sign to protect the children in the neighborhood.
Okay. Alderman Coder, any questions for Alderman Moore?
No questions.
Okay, Alderman Boyd.
Is it in your ward?
Yeah.
Okay, no questions.
Alderman Bosley.
No questions.
Alderman Middlebrook.
questions.
I just have one question. Will you be competing with Alderman
Vaccaro.
Vaccaro of the 23rd Ward on the most stop signs in the ward?
I've already got him beat double,
Oh, okay. All right, well,
and that still don't slow traffic down.
hearing that, would you like to make a motion on your board bill, Alderman?
Make a motion to pass Board Bill 214 out with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Then moving in second, no objection to previous roll. Hearing none, Board Bill 214 is not a committee with due pass recommendation. Okay, Board Bill 216, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy. We're gonna hold that until next week.
Yeah, might I say why?
Sure, if you'd like to. You have
Well,
commentary.
Homer Phillips is in my ward, the hospital itself, and the senior living facility, and plus his home is in my ward. So I told Terry, I think it would be appropriate if that was put in my ward instead of his ward. Need to be in the fourth ward. Homer Phillips' home is at 4534 Cottage, and then you got 2601 Whittier, where Homer Phillips Senior Living Facility is, so I think Homer Phillips belong in the bill.
Okay. So give us commentary on Auburn and Fountain. What's the significance for that intersection? Did he live in Lewis Place?
He lives at 45.
He's never lived in Lewis Place.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
His house still stands at 4534 Cottage.
Is somebody
Is
in
it-
there? Is it
No,
occupied?
it's
It's a van?
unoccupied. He's got a sign on it. He'll be shot if you.
Is it a historic
I was
landmark?
gonna say, is it historic?
Is it a historic landmark
Yeah.
designated?
It is, good.
Oh, you need to get some money for it.
All righty.
They
Anything
need a
else,
rehab.
Von Moore?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Well, I am going to consider the Streets, Traffic, and Refuge Committee adjourned.